Hi everyone, thank you very much for stopping by and returning to the old world. Today we are talking Warhammer, and is it really for everyone? So we know that Games Workshop a few years ago said it is, and that was in reaction to an event in Spain. I won't go into the details, there's plenty about that already online. But their big thing is Warhammer is for everyone. And I think when you look at the hobby generally, there's a really good argument for that. It's such a broad church. The Warhammer experience isn't just about pushing models around on the tabletop. Yes, that's part of it, but you've got the painting, the modelling, the terrain builders, you've got the lore people, you've got the writers. It's just so many different aspects of wargaming generally, and particularly I think with like Warhammer, where there's the fantasy sci-fi bent to it, where whatever your creative leaning, there is something for you. And even within those broad stroke cohorts, there's variety. So take your painters. You've got everything from I'm happy just to slap a layer of paint on and call it done. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got the people that will spend hundreds of hours poring over the minutest of details on their models and want to push themselves to paint to the highest standards they possibly can in order to win competitions. And then you've got everything in between. The wargame side itself, you've got your casual gamers, your narrative gamers, you've got your tournament players, you've got win at all costs, must abuse the rules as hard as I can. There's every type of player there can be out there. And I think most people don't even fall within a single bracket, and they all play across a number of different characterizations. I don't want to stick people in boxes because I think, to be honest, most people aren't in a box when it comes to this sort of hobby, and trying to find ways of describing everyone is really difficult because we're all so individual and we take our own inspirations. And that's great. We've got so many people doing so many different things. We can learn from each other, we can inspire each other. And that is one of the huge positives of the wargaming community. But there are some negatives, and I think we need to be mindful of that in our interactions. Now, Games Workshop has itself said that Warhammer Old World, when it's released, isn't going to be for new players. It's a game designed for experienced wargamers, not necessarily, I think, Warhammer veterans, because that community kind of had a hard line drawn on it 8 or so years ago with the end times, and you're not going to get all of those people coming back. And let's be honest, for Warhammer to succeed, you can't just rely on a handful of old, I say handful, there was a lot of people playing it, but you can't rely on the old veterans just coming back. There needs to be new players to the game. I think Games Workshop visualises them as not necessarily new to wargaming. So what that means, okay, the intro box won't necessarily have rulers, dice and terrain in it, and models aren't going to just be friendly materials like hard plastic, but involve resin and metal as well. That's kind of okay. But I think part of the problem with saying this game's not for new players, it also kind of leans into some of the toxic narrative we're seeing on some of the forums, and I think that's quite disappointing. What do I mean by this? Well, there's a lot of gatekeeping going on, and as we get more and more rumours around the game being released, it seems to be becoming slightly more prolific. Now, maybe that's just me, maybe that's just the feeds I'm looking at chucking more and more of this stuff at me. That could well be the case, but there definitely does seem to be a vocal minority that have an issue with anything that's not the way they specifically want to play the game, and that to me is, as I say, disappointing. And this gatekeeping comes in a variety of different flavours. There's your button counter that says you can't paint models a certain way and they have to be very specific. it's not like we're trying to paint historical models where we're looking at uniforms that actually existed. It's all made up. So, we can make it up too. I don't really see a huge problem in that. Then there's the people that decide you can only use certain models in your army. And I have seen the argument that, well, if you don't buy Games Workshop figures, then the game will die. Yes, there's going to be a grain of truth in that, because let's face it, if Games Workshop don't sell enough figures, don't make enough profit, they're not going to necessarily want to throw the resources at the game in order to support it. But you kind of need to allow for every eventuality and for people to get in the game, because they're going to be buying something, even if it's just the rules. But I'd rather have people playing the game and enjoying themselves and buying a little bit than people feel they're priced out because they have to buy the official figures, which are a lot more expensive than 3D prints, the competition, or indeed using historical figures if you're using like an Empire or Britannian army. I've even seen some gatekeeping comments around people preparing for Warhammer Old World and getting armies ready to go. And the argument there is, if you buy models now, even if you buy from Games Workshop, you're going to be using Age of Sigmar ranges, so the tick in the box will go to Age of Sigmar rather than Warhammer Old World. So if you buy a complete new army now ready for Warhammer Old World, none of that money will be attributed to Warhammer Old World, therefore you will kill the game and it's all your fault. Which is just silly, because I think, what's better? Day one, the game gets released, people buy some boxes, but nobody plays because they're not been allowed to prepare for the game. Or day one, first week, there's loads of action in the gaming clubs, in the Games Workshop stores, etc. People turning up with a nicely painted army, ready to go, playing the game, so that people who might be interested in it see the game in action and go, what's that? That looks interesting. Starts the conversation, potentially get involved. So the gatekeeping isn't necessarily helpful, and for people that maybe are experiencing an interest in getting involved in Warhammer ahead of time, if their first interaction with the community is with a gatekeeper, it's not a good look for the whole community. And whilst frequently, yes, the gatekeepers do get shouted down or challenged, which is good, by then you've potentially lost a new member of the community. As I say, I think when Warhammer Old World comes out, it needs new people to get involved. That will bring it the new ideas, the new inspirations, etc. But it'll also bring an increased player base, more people we can play against, more people we can enjoy our hobby with. So as much as we can do Warhammer solo, and it is entirely possible, for me, what marks it out from sitting and playing computer games, for example, in similar settings, is that social aspect. As an aside, I do have a number of friends where most of the times I speak to them or see them, it's through the medium of playing games. So we'll have a bite to eat, a couple of drinks, chat through, spend hours playing a single game rather than your tournaments or 2-hour game. We can spend the best part of a day just playing a normal game, because it's kind of ancillary, it's brought us together, it's that common interest that then sparks the other conversations around everything else that's going on. It's the social aspect is the glue to that sort of relationship. And within the context of all of this, I think what we can't forget is the huge crossover with Total War Warhammer. This is a big opportunity. Now, I've said before, I think to an extent, the opportunity has been missed by the delayed release of the game, given that Total War 3 is pretty much complete now, apart from maybe a few straggling bits of DLC. But there are a lot of people out there who won't have experienced Warhammer the first time around, and their only experiences of the game comes through computer games. And that they'll now be potentially exploring other ways of tapping into this lore and playing the game. This is the huge opportunity, I think, for bringing new new blood, new ideas into the hobby. And as I say, I think more people equals more opponents and a greater opportunity for us to have a better experience because of it in the way that we hobby, be it at the tabletop, be it through inspirational paint jobs, fan fiction, whatever you like. So, Warhammer, is it for everyone? Broadly speaking, if you've got an interest in the creative elements that make up wargaming and perhaps the Warhammer aspect of the hobby, then yes, absolutely, there is a place for you at the table. There are members of our community who will sadly suggest that isn't the case, and that the only people welcome are people that absolutely do things their way and agree with them. And I think you will find these people in every single hobby, in every single community. It's their way or highway. That's the way they want to do it, fine, but we shouldn't be putting off new people to the community. We should be welcoming. It is for everyone. I'd just like to wrap up by saying thank you very much for stopping by. If you've liked this video and perhaps thought about some of the others in the back catalogue, do go check them out. If you like them, consider subscribing. All helps. Drop in any comments you've got in the box below. All that remains for me to say once again is thank you very much for listening. I am returned to the old world. Have a great day.